It was a cold, damp night, the kind of night where the chill seems to creep right into your bones. A small, frail figure slipped out of a back door. Her name was Amelia. She was only 10 years old. Her bare feet made no sound on the wet pavement. Each step was a gamble, a desperate, silent plea for help. She was running from a house that was no longer a home but a prison. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the quiet suburban street. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she had to get away. The darkness was both a friend and an enemy, hiding her from her tormentors, but also hiding any potential savior. Her small frame, emaciated from months of starvation, shivered violently. The thin nightdress she wore offered no protection against the biting wind. She could hear voices inside the house, angry voices, her father's. It hadn't always been this way. There were photographs, tucked away in dusty albums, of a different time, a time of birthday parties, bright, gap-toothed smiles. Amelia was a happy child by all accounts. Neighbors remembered her playing in the front garden, her laughter carrying on the summer breeze. She loved animals, drawing colorful pictures of magical castles. Her school reports described her as a bright, if sometimes quiet, student. But that was before her mother left, before her father's new girlfriend Sarah moved into their home. That was when the light in Amelia's world began to dim, slowly at first and then all at once. The change was insidious. It started with small cruelties disguised as discipline. Amelia was made to stand in a corner for hours for a minor transgression, like spilling a drink. Her meals were withheld as punishment for not completing chores to Sarah's exacting standards. The psychological torment began to weave its way into the fabric of her daily life. She was told she was worthless. When police finally entered the house on that grim August morning, the scene that greeted them was one of almost indescribable squalor and cruelty. The air was thick with the stench of filth and decay. One seasoned detective would later testify, his voice heavy with emotion, that it was not a home but a chamber of horrors. Every surface was coated in grime, piles of rubbish, dirty dishes. Yet amidst the chaos, the living room where her father and his girlfriend spent their time was relatively tidy. A large television, comfortable sofas. The contrast was stark and sickening. It was a clear demarcation of worlds within the same small house. Amelia's world was upstairs. Her bedroom door had been fitted with a bolt on the outside. It was a cage. Inside, the room was bare except for a soiled mattress and a bucket in the corner. There were no toys, no books, no drawings on the wall. The window had been boarded up, plunging the room into a perpetual twilight. The stench in this room was overwhelming. This was where Amelia had spent her final agonizing months. In the aftermath, journalists flocked to the quiet suburban street, asking the one question on everyone's mind: how could this have happened? The neighbors were in a state of shock, their faces etched with a mixture of horror and guilt.
You just don't think something like this could happen right next door?
They seemed normal, I suppose. We'd see him washing his car on a Sunday. She would sometimes nod hello. The facade of normalcy had been expertly maintained. The curtains were always drawn, and the house was always quiet. Too quiet, some now realized in hindsight. Several residents did recall hearing things, disturbing things, shouting sometimes, the sound of something heavy being thrown, a child's cry, muffled and brief, late at night.
You hear things, but you try to mind your own business.
You think maybe it's just a family argument. You don't want to interfere, to cause trouble. You tell yourself it's probably nothing. That reluctance to get involved, a common feature of modern life, had created a shield of privacy behind which the abusers could operate without fear of interruption. A few people had felt a more persistent sense of unease. A young mother living across the street remembered seeing Amelia in the garden, months before she disappeared from view entirely. Perhaps the most heart-wrenching aspect of Amelia's story is that she was not entirely invisible to the system designed to protect her. Records show that 2 years before her death, a teacher at her primary school had raised concerns. She had noticed Amelia's frequent absences, her withdrawn behavior, and unexplained bruises. A referral was made to Child Protection Services. This was the first and perhaps the most critical opportunity for intervention. A social worker was assigned to the case, a file was opened, and a process was set in motion. However, the response was sadly tragically inadequate. A home visit was conducted, during which both the father and his girlfriend were reportedly charming and plausible. They explained away the bruises as the result of childish clumsiness, and her absences as minor illnesses. Amelia, coached and terrified, said nothing. The social worker, overworked and dealing with a caseload far beyond manageable levels, noted that the home appeared satisfactory and that there was no immediate cause for concern. The case was downgraded in priority and eventually closed due to a lack of concrete evidence. The system had been placated and the abusers were emboldened. A year later, a second red flag was raised after Amelia was withdrawn from school for homeschooling. The call to the emergency services wasn't from a neighbor or a remorseful parent. Instead, the call was made by a paramedic team after the father rang for an ambulance. He told them his daughter had, quote, fallen down the stairs and was unresponsive. When the paramedics arrived, they knew immediately this wasn't a simple accident. They were confronted with an emaciated, lifeless child. The scene was so horrific, one paramedic had to be led away in shock. They immediately notified the police. Forensic teams began preserving the scene. The house was sealed with police tape as a crime scene. Amelia was pronounced dead on arrival at hospital. Her father and his girlfriend, Sarah, were taken to the local police station for questioning. Their initial interviews revealed a chilling lack of remorse or emotion. They stuck to the full story in flat, monotonous tones. The father appeared calm, almost detached. Sarah was defiant and hostile, complaining about the cold interview room. Detectives described their behavior as unsettlingly normal. There were no tears, there was no panic, only a cold, calculated recitation of their fabricated story. They seemed to think they could lie their way out of it. Forensic evidence from the house began to arrive. Preliminary autopsy results followed. The web of their lies began to unravel. A sheer number of injuries was documented. The trial of Amelia's father and his girlfriend captivated and horrified the nation. The public gallery was packed every single day with journalists and members of the public. News cameras and reporters jostled outside the court. In the dock, the two accused presented a study in contrasts. The father sat with his head bowed, avoiding eye contact. He looked broken and weak. Sarah was defiant, staring at the prosecutor with contempt and disbelief. The prosecution laid out its case with methodical and heartbreaking detail. Forensic evidence was presented. Autopsy reports were read into the record. Photographs of Amelia's injuries were shown. Jurors were visibly distressed, some openly weeping. Police described the state of her bedroom, the so-called Chamber of Horrors. A happy Amelia in family photos was contrasted with the final, devastating autopsy image. The weight of the evidence was overwhelming. The defense strategies were predictable and self-serving. The father's barrister argued diminished responsibility, saying he'd been dominated. They portrayed him as a victim too. Sarah's defense was outright denial. Her barrister attacked the evidence and tried to brand Amelia a problem child. The public gallery gasped. The judge rebuked the defense. Neither defense stood up to the mountain of evidence. After a 4-week trial, the jury took less than 3 hours to reach their verdict. Guilty on all counts. Amelia's story, while uniquely tragic, does not stand in isolation. It is a haunting echo of other names etched into the UK's conscience as symbols of systemic failure in child protection. Names like Victoria Climby Peter Connolly, better known as Baby P. Victoria Climby, an 8-year-old girl, died in 2000 after suffering horrific abuse and neglect at the hands of her great-aunt and her partner. Her death led to a massive public inquiry headed by Lord Laming, which resulted in sweeping reforms. Every Child Matters programme, Children Act 2004. These reforms were designed to improve information sharing between agencies and place a statutory duty on them to work together to safeguard children. Yet, just 7 years later, the case of 17-month-old Peter Connolly shocked the nation all over again. Baby P died after suffering more than 50 injuries over an 8-month period, despite being seen by social workers, doctors and police 60 times. His case revealed that despite the new laws, the court case is over. The perpetrators are behind bars. But for Amelia, justice came far too late. Her story forces us to confront a deeply uncomfortable truth. The safety of a child is not just the responsibility of parents or designated professionals. It is a collective responsibility. It rests on the shoulders of neighbors, teachers, doctors, every single member of a community. It takes a village to raise a child. And to protect one, we cannot afford to mind our own business. when a child's welfare might be at stake. The fear of interfering, of being wrong, pales beside the cost of silence. We must become more attuned to the warning signs. Consistently withdrawn, anxious, hungry, unexplained injuries, afraid of their parents, suddenly absent from school, vanishing from the neighborhood. These are potential cries for help. Reporting is not meddling. It's a civic duty, an act of compassion. A single call, even from a vague suspicion, can begin to uncover a hidden nightmare. This is not about blame, it is about responsibility. Demand more from government, properly funded, properly resourced child protection services, social workers with manageable caseloads, better training, time to do their jobs properly, agencies with robust information sharing systems. Close the loopholes that let abusers isolate children. We owe it to Amelia and to all failed children to build a strong safety net. Amelia's story is a call to action. A plea to open our eyes and our hearts. Look out for children in our communities. Listen to your instincts. Have the courage to speak up. We cannot bring her back, but we can honor her memory by ensuring this does not repeat. Work toward a future where no child must attempt a desperate escape. A future where every child is seen, heard, and protected.